When your friends, your supposed friends, are calling your polling very dark, you know you've got yourself some problems. Happy Friday morning. We have made it to the end of the week. Welcome in on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. So I saw this on thehill.com yesterday that former Obama advisor David Axelrod said on a podcast that he does, which is called Hacks on Tap. Very appropriate for David Axelrod to be in a podcast called Hacks on Tap. But anyway, he called this new poll that we've been touching on throughout the week about Joe Biden, called it a very, very dark poll for Joe Biden's reelection campaign possibilities. It shows, of course, Donald Trump taking a 4-point lead over Joe Biden in a hypothetical one-on-one matchup between these two candidates. On top of that, it shows Joe Biden's approval rating continue to sink towards record lows. In this Wall Street Journal poll, it's the largest lead Trump has had in the last couple of years in this theoretical matchup between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And Biden's approval rating is now 37%. That is an all-time low from the Wall Street Journal. While 61% see his overall image in an unfavorable light, which is a record high. So we've talked about this poll throughout the week, but the fact that now his allies, his friends, the people that are supposed to have his back are calling it a very, very dark poll in their podcast this week tells me that they're looking for an out. The question is who? The question is, will that person step up? Now, we've heard all the chatter. Gavin Newsom's going to come in and save the day. The California governor, could he be the guy come 2024 that ultimately takes over the mantle? Maybe. There's, of course, one massive name out there that wouldn't have to do an ounce of campaigning, that Joe could hand it over to basically at the convention next summer, and that's Michelle Obama. That's entirely possible. I've wondered that for a very long time. She's the only one, I think, who could get away with it. Gavin Newsom would have to do some kind of campaigning. He'd have to have some type of infrastructure. Michelle would not. It would be Rockstar 2.0 after Barack. And by the way, she'd win in a landslide. I'm just being straight. She would roll to victory. But here's the ultimate problem, and this has been the problem for the last, going on nearly 3 years now for this administration. They have a Kamala Harris problem. You know, in many ways, it's a great lesson for all of us. Corporate America, small business, big business, politicians. Affirmative action does not work. You need to pick the best person for the job. But go back to 2020. Go back to the summer of love. And Joe Biden promised that he was going to pick a woman of color. And Kamala Harris was not anywhere close to the best option for him. Leaving the skin color and the gender out of it, take it all aside for a second. I mean, he was looking at women like Amy Klobuchar, Minnesota U.S. Senator, Democrat, obviously. He was looking at her. But then once he put his own stipulations in there, if you recall, after the whole George Floyd thing, he said it had to be a woman of color. That took someone like Klobuchar off the board. Now, I suppose she could have identified as a woman of color. I suppose she could have done the whole, Elizabeth Warren. She could have pretended to be Native American because, Pawpaw said I had high cheekbones. She could have done that whole shtick. But, to Amy Klobuchar's credit, she's like, I'm a white lady, so I guess I'm out. But they've been dealing with this problem now for the better part of 3 years. Kamala Harris is the worst vice president, certainly in my lifetime. And by the way, it's hard to be a really bad vice president. You don't do a lot. All you have to do is kind of not embarrass yourself and do what the boss asks. And she's incapable of doing the former. I mean, we have gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, week after week after week, awkward, hideous chuckles where they're not necessary. I mean, it is like watching an episode of Veep. That's what Kamala Harris's vice presidency is. It is real life Veep. And the White House knows that they've got this massive problem. They can't just hand her the reins. She's unlikable and she's incapable of doing the job. So this is why, case in point, you do not hire. If all else is equal and you want diversity of color, background, whatever, that's cool. That's great. That's good. But you cannot put somebody in this kind of a position like Kamala Harris simply because of skin color and gender. You can't do it. If they're the best person for the job, I mean, by all means, knock your socks off. That's great. But that's clearly not what anybody actually thought was the case. It's just gotten worse than anybody imagined. So this is all now, leading into next year. And gosh, we are 2 weeks away from flipping the calendar to 2024. And no one's got the answer. And they are suddenly scared to death of this idea that they're going to lose a rematch to Donald Trump. And by the way, they should be nervous about that. They have every reason to be nervous about that. Now, do I believe the polls theoretically would tighten up come 24? Yeah. Trump's going to have himself in a lot of legal battles next year. He's going to be in a lot of courtrooms. It's going to be hard for him to campaign like he wants to. There's going to be a lot of resources sucked up into legal issues that should be used on things like campaigning. So I'm not sitting here. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't. I think a lot of Democrats are ultimately going to come home, even though they realize their guy's done a bad job. They're not going to be able to vote for Trump. And Trump's going to be hamstrung. And, there's going to be a lot of attention on the fact that he'll be in courtrooms and less attention on things like the economy, where the world is at right now, the failures on the global stage. All those things the media will make sure they put to the wayside to do Trump, 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 Trump. That's what they'll do. It's not like some incredible prediction. It's pretty easy to tell what's going to happen here. You don't have to be following this stuff all that closely. You just have to be somewhat in the news cycle to know what they're going to do come 2024. So we know they're going to do it. So now you got to figure out what exactly the best play is going forward. And for some of you that I know are all in on DeSantis or Haley or, God forbid, Vivek's your guy, I'm not saying the thing's over. But until I see real polls that suggest this whole thing, this primary is closer than expected, I have no reason not to talk about this in any other way except to say Trump's the guy. And maybe Iowa surprises us and New Hampshire surprises us, and then we move this conversation around. But for now, for all intents and purposes, I've just got to sit here and look at it and say, well, I'm going to assume it until the voters tell me otherwise. And the voters might do that. I mean, I got a tough time with any polls these days. They're very difficult to believe anything. But for the time being, we're going to sit back. We're going to assume this is what we've got going into next year. And we'll let the chips fall where they may. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line. That's our text line. It's a Friday morning, and it's great to be here with you. I will tell you who our Friday featured guest is going to be. It's become a fun segment we've done the last couple of months. Every Friday, I'm bringing a guest into the studio for most of the hour. And I will tell you who that is. And that'll weave into my next story, actually. Some breaking news overnight from one of our area counties. We'll dive into that coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Hey, I just say it how I see it here on a Friday morning. Welcome in. I will share with you our featured Friday guest coming up in a couple of minutes. I do want to also get to you, the text line, as we get the ball rolling on a Friday morning. Sherry is in Overland Park. Hello, Sherry. What's happening?
Well, excuse my Friday tirade moment, but after seeing what happened in 2020 with Joe Biden's basement campaign that won, rest assured the Democrats have the election already in the bank. The Republicans are running around a bunch of posers and Keystone cops going after Hunter Biden. All we need to get to the White House, and we can do all that later. They need to rally around a candidate. The Democrats will slip Michelle Obama in. She's bulletproof. I'm not sure who her VP is going to be. I'm pondering that. But Barack Obama's the president now. This is his shadow third term that he wished for. I saw him say it, and he will get his shadow fourth term. Michelle won't have to do anything but dress up and stand there because Barack will be the president. They've already baked the cake. If we don't get the Republicans to get behind a candidate, it's game over. And just let Hunter go for now. The damage is done. They're not going to put 80-some-year-old Biden in jail in the future. That would be cruel. They're not going to do it. We're wasting the oxygen in the room, and our time is running out. So you guys keep doing what you're doing, and I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. I'm just trying to figure out who her VP will be. And as for Kamala, they'll pay her off, threaten her, and bribe her. She will go away. When has anyone ever been a problem for the Democrats? They will make her go away. That is not a problem for them.
Sherry, thank you. Listen, I think the Michelle thing is real, as you do. Interesting take there, Sherry. Thank you for the Hunter Biden point. You know, I think that a lot of that is, listen, Hunter Biden, when he stood up there for his press conference the other day, the guy's a sleazeball. Like, I know a lot of people who have been addicts in their lives, and there's always a level of sympathy, especially when they're trying to get sober and get up on their feet and do the whole thing. But when I saw Hunter Biden do that press conference as he's standing outside the other day in Washington, D.C., it's very hard to not have sympathy for somebody who has dealt with addiction. It is very easy to not have sympathy for Hunter Biden when he acts the way he acts. That being said, Sherry's got a point that I hadn't really thought of, which is, what's the end game here? Is it to hurt Joe? Is it to point out his flaws? Is it to potentially create a scenario where, you know, it makes him less reelectable? In which case, maybe there's something to it. But I hadn't thought about that point, Sherry. It's a very good one. As for whether or not Joe's got this thing in the bag next year, or whoever's, the party's got this thing in the bag next year, we're not going to be dealing with the crazy level of mail-in nonsense that we saw in 2020. A lot of states have cleaned it up. Not enough states, but a lot of states have cleaned it up. So I'm still much more optimistic than some are that 2024 is going to look a heck of a lot different than 2020. But maybe that's just me. So 9 o'clock this morning, we've been doing this for the last couple of months. Our featured Friday guest in studio is going to be former Royals team president and general manager Dayton Moore. I'm very much looking forward to it. We're going to talk not just baseball. We're going to talk about leadership, faith, what he's been up to, where his head is at. He's back here in Kansas City for the offseason. So I reached out to Dayton yesterday afternoon, and I said, hey, we've been doing this thing on Fridays. We've been having guests in studio for the 9 o'clock hour. Kind of a fun way to end the week. And I said, are you in town? He said, yeah, I'm in town, and I'd love to do it. Give me the details. I'm like, okay, can't wait. So do not miss that this morning. If you're already at the office by 9 o'clock, pull us up on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Listen at your computer, at work, kcmotalkradio.com, or, of course, on 95.7 FM. So do not miss that. It's going to be a great conversation at 9 a.m. today. Now, meantime, on the baseball front, speaking of the Royals, this came down last night that Jackson County leaders are not waiting to see if the Royals select a downtown site for their new stadium. They are planning a vote on Monday in 3 days on a ballot question to ask the voters to extend the team's sales tax. Now, this has been the holdup for a while now. Jackson County voters would theoretically decide whether or not to extend the 3/8 cent sales tax for 40 years in an April vote. This is what the Chiefs have wanted for a long time. This is what the Royals, if they stay in Jackson County, have wanted for a long time. This 3/8 cent sales tax has been in place since 2006. when, of course, the stadiums were first renovated and Jackson County voters approved a 3/8 cent sales tax that was then split between the two teams. So essentially, the Chiefs and the Royals each get 3/16 of a cent on every dollar when it comes to sales taxes in Jackson County. So the chairman of the Jackson County Legislature, Deron McGee, introduced the ordinance for Monday's meeting. Legislators would still have to finalize the ballot language, but the deadline, as we've talked about, the deadline to get a question on the April 2024 ballot is mid-January. So they're up against it. They've got basically a month to figure out whether or not they can get something on the ballot. So this is just the first step. Now, they should have done this 2 months ago. Like, this is not something they had to wait this long to do. But, of course, when you're dragging your feet and you're in politics, that's how it goes. You just wait until the last minute, and then you hope it all works out. And now we're looking at this thing and we're saying to ourselves, okay, as I'm looking ahead for Jackson County, this is a good first step. I believe the voters should decide whether or not they want to extend the current 3/8 cent sales tax to keep these two teams in Jackson County. And by the way, this will pass. If this is on the ballot, this will pass. Even if you're mad about the Royals moving, the Chiefs are going to be on the ballot. Nobody is going to reject the team that has hosted 5 straight AFC championships, been to 3 Super Bowls, and won 2 of them. Because they're not talking about adding taxes. They're talking about extending what's currently in place. So I believe this thing will pass if it gets to a ballot in April overwhelmingly. And the reason the April timeline is so important is because the state of Missouri may be kicking in some monies. And the state of Missouri has to know whether or not voters approve the 3/8 cent sales tax extension before they start dishing out some dough. So that's why the timeline for the spring is so important for both of these teams. In the last legislative year for Missouri Governor Mike Parson, that's what this is all about. So a step in the right direction, but we'll see what happens come Monday, because we know this Jackson County legislature is more than capable of mucking a few things up. I said mucking with an M. Coming up next on KCMO, how the Kansas City Star doesn't do journalism but activism. We've got the latest example next. You got to really read between the lines sometimes to get a grasp for just how media can give you an incredible amount of bias while masking itself as just doing journalism. But I have a great example on a Friday morning here for you from the Kansas City Star. I could find one every day, but this is, I mean, when I saw this last night, I got not even 2 paragraphs in, and I thought, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Whenever, we sit here on the show and we say, well, this is not true journalism, this is activism masked as journalism, I can't think of a better case in point than this. Like, if I was teaching a journalism course at Mizzou, not sure they would let me do it, or at KU, I would use this as an example. Hell, UMKC. I know there are media personalities in this town. Did you know that? Outwardly liberal media personalities in Kansas City who are professors at UMKC who are teaching our next generation about journalism. It's crazy. I could leave my own beliefs and bias out of a journalism course. I think I could do it. Maybe one day I will. When I'm old and crusty and you guys are sick of me here, I'll go do that or something. But I would use this article from December 14th, 2023 in the Kansas City Star as a great case in point. Here's the headline. KC mayor meets with White House officials on gun violence as city nears record homicide. So in case you don't know, Kansas City's sitting at 174 homicides right now. The record is 179 set in 2020. So we're 6 away from breaking the record. God willing, we won't. But here's how the article starts. Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas met with White House officials on Wednesday over a proposed federal rule expanding background checks and other steps to control gun violence as the city approaches a record number of homicides in 2023. Okay, that's fine. Next sentence. The visit comes after Kansas City's 177th homicide of the year. They use different numbers than the Kansas City Police Department does, so that's why their numbers are slightly different. Just shy of the 2020 record. Now, here's third sentence. This is where the bias comes in. As city officials look for solutions to the violence, they have often been hamstrung by loose state gun laws enacted by the Republican-controlled General Assembly. Now, if you're thinking, what's the bias? The bias there is the insinuation that the only way the city can stop the violence, the only way the city can stop the potential record number of homicides in this town is by enacting more gun laws. That's how the piece is written. Once again, I'll read the sentence. As city officials look for solutions to the violence, they have often been hamstrung by loose gun laws enacted by the Republican-controlled General Assembly. The insinuation being the only thing that can possibly be done when it comes to trying to curb and curtail these homicides is enacting more gun laws. When there's very little to suggest that that is the crux of the problem. But they write this in a news piece. This is not an opinion piece. It's not some editorial. This is a straight news piece written by one of their reporters, Jonathan Shorman. And that right there shows the bias of where this article is going. So I got 3 sentences into this as I was reading it last night, and I'm looking at this article, and I'm like, there it is right there. That's the bias that the Kansas City Star has had forever. We all have more or less known it's been there forever, but they put it on full-blown display. And listen, I have said for the last few weeks, and I've talked to many, and some of you have disagreed with me on this, and that's fine, but I've talked to many folks in law enforcement who will say the biggest problem we have, of course, is short staffing. Kansas City Police Department's, as I understand it, talking to somebody yesterday, is going to have about 1,080 cops, or 1,080 on the force come 2024. When they are fully staffed, they are at 1,415. So they'll be down over 300, and they'll be down more than 20% of where they should be when it comes to cops and people in the department and everything else. That's a big number, off over 20%. So that's number one. Number two, you got a prosecutor that they don't trust. You have a prosecutor who this police department is not going to stick its neck out on the line for. And no one's willing to call her out. Now, she's, of course, done come next year. There's going to be a new prosecutor in Jackson County. But in the meantime, it still would be nice if city leadership decided to call her out a little bit because she's done a terrible job. Now, Quinton Lucas is not going to do it. We've teed him up. We've put it on a silver platter for Quinton Lucas whenever he wants to on his Thursday conversations to just knock it out of the park and finally call out Gene Peters Baker for being a terrible prosecutor in Jackson County and allowing repeat offenders and criminals to run wild. He does not want to do it. I don't know if it's personal. I don't know if it's because they both have a D next to their names. I don't know, but he won't do it. And then, yes, you do have what cops have told me is a problem, and that is the Second Amendment Preservation Act. And that's basically preventing local law enforcement from working with federal officials if somebody has broken a federal gun law. That's essentially what it does. Because then they could go to the feds if Jean's not willing to do her job. But now state law doesn't really allow them to work with the feds on this stuff. So that's where the beef has been. And by the way, Eric Greitens, who nobody is going to call an anti-gun rhino or something like that, also railed on this SAPA, Second Amendment Preservation Act, a couple of years ago. And he had to knock that off because suddenly his political opponents were using that against him. But there is something there. And I've long said I would give that conversation a little more attention if the people in charge admitted the first two are much bigger problems. That is lack of staffing, and that is a prosecutor's office that simply does not do its job and finds every excuse in the book to make the criminals into the victims. But until they do that, until they're willing to have that conversation and actually talk about, hey, What do we do when it comes to charging these criminals? How do we keep them off the streets? How do we get more cops on the streets? How do we make sure that we're hiring as many folks as we can to be a part of this great department? Until we do those two things, I'm not going to take you seriously on the gun stuff. I'm not. Because those two are much bigger problems. Much bigger. And they don't want to admit it. They just want to go right to the gun. And they know the Kansas City Star is going to carry their water on this, like they did on this supposed news piece. It's not a news piece. It's making Kansas City's homicide problem all about no local control. The big bad Republicans in Jeff City run it, and they're nuts with their gun laws, therefore we can't do anything. By the way, nothing's changed from when we started this conversation 4 years ago. Heck, nothing's changed since Quentin Lucas ran for mayor in 2019. And he did say that he, is going to get the homicide number under 100. We are sitting at 174. And when everyone else was railing on him a couple of years ago, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I said he deserves time if he's going to implement some policies to get the homicide numbers down. Well, we are now 1, 2, 3. This will be his fourth full year as a mayor, and it will be 4 of the deadliest years in Kansas City history. Coming up, as I understand it, one of our key callers has some beef with us. Is that right, Garner? Can you confirm or deny that? Oh, turn your mic on there, my man. I'm not hearing you. I think you got to hit 1 on the top there. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, that sounds about right. I would agree with that.
Okay. So John's got the day off. Mark, of course, is still on baby duty. So it's Garner and I holding down the fort. And as I understand it, a caller who's a regular to this show is not happy with how he was treated yesterday. So I'm going to find out what this is all about. We'll get to it coming up next. And then Kendall Gammon will get us set for the Chiefs-Patriots this weekend just after the top of the hour on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. It is Friday. We've made it to the end of the week. I'm in a good mood. Hope you're in a good mood. I know my man Garner's in a good mood. We're holding down the fort today. We've got Dayton Moore, former Royals team president and GM, coming into the studio for our featured Friday conversation, 9 o'clock. So don't miss that. We're not just going to be talking baseball. We're talking life and leadership, and he's got a lot of passions beyond baseball. So it's not going to be an hour of baseball talk, I promise you. He is a very interesting guy, a lot of depth to him, and a lot of interest beyond the diamond. So can't wait for that conversation, 9 o'clock this morning on KCMO. Yesterday, one of our best conversations in a while was with Robert Kennedy Jr. He wants to run, or he is running for president as an independent. He's got to get himself on all the ballots. He was in Kansas City at the Uptown 2 nights ago. So we had him on the show yesterday. He was on the way to the airport. And trust me, there's a lot of stuff I do not agree with him on, but he was interesting. And, he is really resonating with young people. And I asked him about that. Really, the 18 to 45 crowd is RFK Jr.'s bread and butter. So it was a topic of conversation yesterday. And some people like that about him. Some people don't. You make what you want of the age thing. I'm just noting it's a deal. I mean, it's a thing, and the polling suggests that RFK Jr. does really well with younger voters. So let's just cut right to the chase. As I understand it, one of our regular callers, Victor in Parkville, is here, and he's not happy with maybe how he was portrayed yesterday. Victor, good morning. Please clear the air for me, my friend. What's going on? What's wrong?
Well, good morning. It's not so much a beef as much as a misunderstanding.
Okay.
And, I agree with what JFK Jr. says and what you had said, that there's a lot of disenfranchisement portrayed by the 18 to 45 crowd. I get that. But I take umbrage with the misrepresentation of my position about RFK Jr. voters. I didn't say that all people under 45 or under 25, for that matter, are low information or no information voters. What I said was that a lot of 18 to 25 year olds get their news from TikTok and late night shows, and that's been backed up by research, though I can't recall who actually did the survey. Now, you pointed out correctly most people don't start paying attention to the local politics or geopolitics until the late 30s or early 40s, once they become adults and start families and owning their homes, and they look at politics, and they soon realize how invasive the federal government is, and or once they see how inept, bloated, and overbearing the Fed is, they realize they really only have a chance to make a difference with local government. So they start getting involved. Mm-hmm. Now, it's been my experience that a lot of older voters get their information from a variety of sources, and a lot of have actually become more adept at getting their news from the internet and stuff like that. It gives you a greater variety, and they don't just watch cable news, which is what you were throwing out. Now, that's why I believe they have a higher degree of involvement and a greater source of information. That doesn't mean there aren't plenty of idiots over 45, as shown by some of your callers. And I wasn't going to specify names. I've also spoken with many teenagers and 20-something-year-olds that have a lot more on the ball than some of the 50 and 60-year-olds that I've had conversations with. There's a variety of people that have a variety of information. My greater point was the younger the voter, the less informed they are, and they're more willing to grab onto somebody like a JFK Jr., RFK Jr., thank you, who believe he's actually going to make a difference, and that's just not going to happen.
Listen, when you say make a difference, what do you mean by that? Win an election or?
Well, no, he's got a snowball's chance in hell of winning.
Yeah, I agree.
And can he move the needle? Yes. And I do think he's going to move the needle more towards Donald Trump and take away more from Joe Biden, because typically, as studies have shown, the younger the voter, the more ideologically liberal they are. Mm-hmm. So he's going to take more away from the Democrat base than he will from the Republican base.
I agree with that. And hey, your nuance is appreciated, Victor. Do you feel like your stance has been fully stated now? Do you feel better about things going into the weekend?
I like that you've given me a chance to clear the air and my somewhat tarnished name.
Come on. No one tarnished your name. People just heard what you said and they got mad at you, and that's okay. That's what makes the world go round.
Okay, what they heard, what they thought they heard was I said everybody over 45 was idiots, and they only got their information from TikTok, and that's not what I said. Mm-hmm. So I'm very grateful to you for giving me the opportunity to be more specific and more time to be able to flesh out my comments.
Now you know how I feel, man.
Oh, God, you are so misunderstood so many times, dude.
Now you know how I feel. People hear what they want to hear. Right?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Hey, have a great weekend, Victor. Don't lose an ounce of sleep over this. You're always welcome back on KCMO.
Oh, I appreciate it, sir. And, you take care. Have a good weekend and enjoy your family.
You as well.
Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. Or as I like to say, Happy Merry Solstice Festa Ramahana Kwanzmas.
Well done. A very nice job there, Victor in Parkville. See you later. I can't even repeat what he just said. I couldn't do it if I tried. But that was clearly he's done that once or twice. Unless he had that line all baked into the cake already. 913-408-7957. If you missed the RFK Jr. conversation on the show yesterday, it is up on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, search Pete Mundo, subscribe to the show. All the interviews we do get posted there. And it was a fascinating conversation. Wes is on KCMO. Hey, Wes, good morning.
Yeah, Pete, people hearing only what they want to hear. That's a husband and wife talking to each other, okay?
Yeah. Or a radio host and a listener.
Yeah. But as far as RFK Jr. goes, he was great on the COVID thing, and Fauci, and how that was all about the government taking away your rights, right? But then he's all in on the climate change thing, where the government is going to take away your rights in order to save the planet. And it's like, okay, wait a minute, man. Which side of liberty are you on? And it sounds to me like he's really not for it if he's for climate change, because what they're going to impose on people is going to take away your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not consistent. And then the whole thing, he's for reparations. And Pete, help me out here. Didn't he say that he wanted to put people in prison that had contributed to climate change? Or there was somebody that he wanted to put into jail, and it was like, what the heck are you talking about, man?
Thank you very much there, Wes. I can't say that with certainty either way about if he said that about someone. I haven't heard that. Doesn't mean it's not true, but I have not heard that at all. But listen, it is true. He's kind of all over the map. But listen, that's interesting. I'm sick of, being told by brain-dead politicians who take my vote for granted what I should believe. I'm not an RFK guy for a lot of the reasons, both our callers here have laid out, but I'm interested in people who are interesting, even if I disagree with them. How's that sound? So next time he's in KC, we'll have to get him back on again. Coming up, Kendall Gammon will get us set for the Chiefs, taking on the Patriots. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, another example of how the airlines are an absolute disaster. That's coming up. It is that time of year. I know many of you are going to Christmas parties, holiday parties, the whole thing, right? I'm sure some of you have them tonight. It's Friday night. 2 Fridays to go till Christmas. So it's a popular time of year for the holiday party. Whether it's personal, whether it's professional, we've all got it. Are you going to the holiday party next week, Garner? Or are you going to pass on that one?
I'm not sure. I want to go, but I have a long day the next day.
Yeah.
I have to do, I have to do this show, and then I have a toy drive for one of our sister stations right afterwards.
Yeah. That is a long day, man.
Yeah, very long day.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're up in St. Joe as well. So
so I have an hour commute each way.
You got to hike. Yeah, you got to hike. All right. Well, either way.
I want to go. I had a really good time last year. It was great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's going to be a good time. I'm off the next day, and it was just happened to fall that way, so I got kind of lucky. If I had to work the next day, I probably wouldn't be going like you. But since I'm not working the next day, I probably should show my face, right?
Yeah.
Probably
it's a good idea.
Probably the right thing to do.
It's a lot of fun.
Exactly. It is going to be fun. But I got a text yesterday from a number I don't know. Now, somehow I got in this 20-person group chat, and there's only 3 people I have in my phone in this group chat. 2 city council members, Kevin O'Neill and Melissa Robinson, who are on the Kansas City, Missouri City Council. I'm sure there's other people on this chat who I would know. I just don't have their numbers in my phones. And then the other person I've got in this group chat is Richard Chavez, who was part of that Northland PAC during the city council races. So that means there's 20 people in this chat. I've got 3 numbers in my phone of people I know, and then there's 17 others. I have no idea who they are. And I don't know how this thing started. I think it was started by one of the city council members, like doing the whole Merry Christmas maybe like 2 years ago. It was really strange, and somehow I ended up on it. And listen, I'm always willing to say Merry Christmas to somebody, Happy New Year, the whole deal. But this group chat has gone on, and it kind of like shows up in my phone once every couple of months where someone puts something in this group chat. And I'm like, I don't even know who most of these people are. Or maybe I do, but I don't have their numbers. So yesterday, it comes from a number I don't know in this same group chat of 20 people. And it's a holiday party invite from Freedom Incorporated for next Wednesday. Now, if you don't know Freedom Incorporated here in town, they're a political organization that, according to their own website, is responsive to the needs, issues, and concerns of the African-American community. It says here, the mission of Freedom Incorporated is to impact public policy decisions, foster economic development, and generate wealth to improve the life for African Americans. Now, listen, I'm all about that. I'm all about improving the lives and well-being and quality of life for all Kansas Cityans, including African Americans. Like, that's great. Now, based on some of the leadership in Freedom Inc., based on some of the things Freedom Inc. has pushed for in this town, I think they're going about it the exact wrong way. But, hey, their mission statement is one I can certainly get behind. So now I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, do I randomly show up at this Freedom Inc. holiday party next week And I don't want to say where it is because I don't know if that's supposed to be public knowledge or not. But, like, do I show up and just say, hey, I got my invite on my phone here? Like, am I on a guest list? I don't know how any of this works because I don't know who sent out the invite. And whoever sent out the invite, I don't know if I'm supposed to respond to it and say I'll be there. There's nothing about RSVPing on the invite. Is it just first come, first get in? Is there a lot? I don't know. But now I'm questioning whether or not I should show up to the Freedom Inc. holiday party next Wednesday. And then when they ask me what I'm doing there, I'll say, well, my invite's right here on my phone. Now, what's interesting is there was 20 people on this text message, and nobody responded to the Freedom Inc. holiday party invitation that somebody sent out with no details. They just sent out like a flyer via text message, which is a very odd way to invite somebody to a holiday party. It wasn't like, hey, you're all, I don't know, relatively meaningful Kansas Cityans. Come on out and celebrate with us next Wednesday. There was none of that. All it was a text with a flyer. So I don't know what to do. 913-408-7957. I need some help on this because I am totally at a loss. Part of me wants to show up, but I'm also like, what do I wear? What do you wear to the Freedom Inc. holiday party? Wrong answers only, by the way. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm just trying to get my bearings straight and understand what exactly I potentially need to do to go to this party and be accepted and walk around and glad hand and, slap people on the back and have a good old time. I don't know what the food situation is. I don't know what the drink situation is. I know none of that. All I've got is a text message invitation and nothing more. The issues, the trials and tribulations of the holiday season. Random text message invites from people you don't know. What a world. Pete posted on X. I don't want to do that. I don't want, in fairness to the party goers, I don't want to post it on X. I mean, I don't want anyone trolling the party. That wouldn't be right. So I will avoid doing that for now. I'm not going to go down that road. Meantime, I just saw this come across the screen. Tyreek Hill, formerly of the Chiefs, of course. He got married a month ago during the Dolphins bye week. And within a month of getting married, he has been hit with 2 paternity tests. I would say the honeymoon phase ended very quickly for Tyreek. Oh, boy. According to court documents, 2 women, Brittany Lackner and Kimberly Baker, have accused Hill of not adequately providing for the children. He reportedly already pays the 2 women $2,500 per month for these 2 kids with 2 different women who were born this year. So wait. All right. Tyreek got married a month ago to a woman who is not one of these 2 women. Yet he has fathered 2 children with 2 different women, not last year, not 2 years ago, this year. So he already pays the women $2,500 a month. That's $30,000 a year for a guy making $30 million this season. And he got a 4-year, $120 million contract. Tyreek's paying him each $30,000 a year. Boy, whoever Tyreek's got as his attorney, try to find that guy. What a brilliant attorney. He somehow got his client away with paying $30,000 a year to 2 women he's got kids with this year when he's making $30 million. How many professional athletes are right now on the phone with their agent looking to figure out who Tyreek's attorney is? Holy smokes, I've never seen it. Usually it's the other way around. Usually for Main Street, guys paying more than he can afford. $30,000 to Tyreek Hill is nothing. That's literally like a nickel to us. So he's had these 2 women this year, had these 2 babies this year with these 2 different women. And he's paying them $30,000 a year. And they're realizing, by the way, why would they agree to that? All you have to do is Google Tyreek Hill contract. Not the sharpest tools in the shed, clearly. All you got to do is Google Tyreek Hill contract. And what shows up? Let me do it right now myself. literally screaming across the top of Google, $120 million. Sure, I'll take $2,500 a month. I mean, in Biden's economy, that barely gets you diapers and baby formula. Wow. So somehow they've come to their senses and they've realized I'm getting screwed here. And, I mean, good for them. Sorry, Tyreek. You should be on the hook for a little more than $2,500 a month. One of the women claims that she needs $10,000 per month with costs rising. I wonder if inflation and Joe's economic policies are included in these lawsuits, by the way. Oh, gosh. Hill is claiming one of the women recently moved from Kansas to Fort Lauderdale for strategic reasons while trying to get the suit tossed from court. So this is a lady who I guess he knows from his time here in Kansas City. These guys don't think with their heads. They really don't. They think with something else. Can you think with your head for 5 seconds? I mean, geez. How many kids now does Tyreek have with how many different women? That's maybe I'll try to figure that out during the commercial break. I know he had one from his days at Oklahoma State with someone he's no longer with. He's got these two. I think there's a couple in between. Unbelievable. I mean, that's how you burn through $120 million real fast. Come on. Coming up next, I want to get into this higher education debacle that we've been seeing firsthand the last couple of months. It's been on steroids this week. Bill Jacobson is a Cornell professor. He's going to be here at the top of the hour to call out his fellow Ivy League institutions and the failures that we've seen on those campuses. And as you know, politicians love taxing Americans. Why won't they tax the endowments of these colleges? These colleges, these institutions, these Ivy League universities have billions of dollars in assets, but they don't want to tax them. And we've got the proof of that next on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Well, I think I've got this right. So these two kids that Tyreek Hill is apparently the father of, paternity tests, according to lawsuits, show that there's a 99.9% chance he's the dad. Where's my guy, Maury? You're the father. That's him, right? So Tyreek's the dad of these two kids that were born this year. Tyreek just got married a month ago to a different woman. So two women are alleging Tyreek owes them more money for pay for the kids that he had with these two different women. And now he got married to a third woman last month. So if I'm doing this right, if my research is right, and, John's off today, so my crack staff isn't here to confirm this for me. But I think that would make it now 6 kids for Tyreek Hill. And that doesn't include his current wife, who he just got married to last month. That's 6 kids. And would that be 4 different women? I mean, Tyreek, we're going to be watching the NFL in 25 years, and Tyreek's son is going to be lining up the line of scrimmage as a wide receiver, and the cornerback is going to be Tyreek's other son. It's going to be like two, what would they be, half-brothers going up against each other in the NFL, both with the last name Hill. Unbelievable. All right, before we get to our buddy Bill Jacobson, Cornell professor, just after the top of the hour. Yesterday in the U.S. Senate, J.D. Vance of Ohio proposed and tried to pass this bill by unanimous consent that would tax the assets of net investment income for college endowments. Right now, the endowments at UPenn, Harvard, and MIT, of course, they're the 3 universities who were on Capitol Hill getting that grilling last week when their president couldn't do the simple thing like condemn anti-Semitism. They have a combined $95 billion in assets, yet they only pay a 1.4% tax rate on net investment income. And, of course, we all know what they use these funds to do. They push, their woke DEI insanity. So J.D. Vance introduced a bill that would tax the largest endowments at 35%. It went to the Senate floor yesterday. Here's J.D. Vance making the case for this bill, and then very quickly it was shut down by Oregon Democratic Senator Ron Wyden. So suddenly we found something that the Democratic Party does not want to tax. They talk about taxing the rich unless you are an Ivy League woke institution and you cram DEI down the throats of your students, in which case, whoa, we don't want to jump to any conclusions when it comes to taxes. Here's J.D. Vance starting off the conversation.
It's unfair, and I think we ought to fix it in this chamber. Now, my friends on the other side will often talk about how the wealthy don't pay their fair share in taxes. If the wealthy don't pay their fair share in taxes, there is no institution in this country that is a bigger offender than these massive endowments that pay almost nothing. So as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S 3514, which is at the desk. I further ask that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Reserving the right to object.
The senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, we hear often about this matter of taxing college endowments, that somehow this is going to address college affordability, make the tax code, more fair. And I'm the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and I gather that my colleague has just introduced this legislation maybe as recently as today, and I think it's appropriate that before we start making tax policy on the floor of the United States Senate, we have a chance to actually have the Senate look at some of the details. For example, if we're going to talk about tax fairness, I'll just say to the senator from Ohio, I welcome that. I'm the author of the bill to say that billionaires who now, under the current tax code, can go for years and years paying little or no taxes, I'm the author of the proposal that would change it.
So he's trying to say, oh, yeah, I welcome that, but he kind of beats around the bush, so to speak, when it comes to J.D. Vance's specific proposal. He tried to pass this bill by unanimous consent to have a higher tax rate on the net investment income of university endowments. Penn, Harvard, and MIT have a combined $95 billion in assets. They right now pay 1.4% as a tax rate on their net investment income. So he's saying, okay, you guys want to tax the supposed rich? Now's your chance. And then Ron Wyden from Oregon swoops in and says, well, no. As Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. It's funny how that works. Tax until suddenly we don't want to tax something because, well, we see long-term and short-term political gains from these institutions. Coming up next, Bill Jacobson is a professor at Cornell University. He is pushing back on a lot of this crazy at the Ivy League level. He'll explain it, and he'll give us a firsthand perspective next.